I'm Bob Savakinus. Welcome to our program in a nutshell. Today I'm with Michael Passero. I would describe Michael as what Willy Wonka was to chocolate, Mike Passero is to collecting of toys. Michael.
Hello, Bob.
Tell us a little bit about what got you first started into collecting toys.
I think I owe the biggest debt of gratitude to my parents, Mike and Phyllis, who both passed. Church on Sunday, and we would go to the parish diner downtown Scranton after church, and Dad, I believe, knew the pharmacist at Sheely's drugstore, and they had like guns in common and that type of stuff, and they always had matchboxes. They had the spinning matchbox displays, and I had to have Matchbox after church. So Mom and Dad, I would get one to play with and one that they would put away, and I never knew about the ones that were put away. And that was probably 62, somewhere around in there. I was born in 62, and so that time frame of being at Sheely's drugstore was in the mid-60s, late 60s. And the matchboxes that they had squirreled away, I had played with mine to death and, cranked them up with a vise and blew them up and, drowned them in the pool. As I got older, here I am, 15, 16-year-old kid, and here's this treasure trove of Matchbox. And other things they'd bought too, other toys, trains and toys, and poof, instantly had a collection. And I had built on it over the years to what it is now, that it's, I lost track, and it's probably upwards of 300,000 pieces.
Wow. So we're going to have a chance for our viewers to take a look at some of the very unique pieces you have with the massive collection of toys that you have. Besides the Matchbox cars, and tell us a little bit about some of your other collectible toys that you have in the collection. And what got you started on them as well? Or is it just a toy thing for you?
It was just the automotive kind of thing. I was actually, I was always enamored with trains, and my brother and I used to have discussions, trains are better than cars, and cars are better than trains, and we'd come to blows over, like who had the better, hobby. And my dad was also a train guy, and we ended up with a lot of trains, and then I branched out over the years, realizing that Matchbox was wonderful, and that there were also a subset of die-cast that branched out, hundreds of various makers. Some of the makers are Barkley and Mattel and Marx. Marx was one of the largest toy makers in the world. They had trains as well as cars. Tonka, which, you're a Tonka collector.
That's one of my favorites, the Tonka. I didn't notice too many Tonkas in your collection, but we'll talk more about that.
Have to check your car on the way home. And but just the subset of other various die-cast makers that came on the scene, did their thing, and then exited, just as fast. And they're all represented in the collection. And I just, but Matchbox is, that's my, nearest to my heart.
So let's take a look at that a little bit. I bring up the name Hot Wheels, which obviously was a competitor of Matchbox. What is your fascination with Matchbox, and what is the difference between a Matchbox and a Hot Wheels car?
Matchbox was pretty much first on the scene. They were originally like 1952-53 in England, and they had metal wheels, and moms in England were not too thrilled when kids were playing with these cars on their dining room table and destroying the table. So Matchbox went in the mid-50s to a plastic wheel, a gray plastic wheel, and eventually a black plastic wheel. In 1968, the upstart Mattel came on the scene with Hot Wheels that had little thinner axles and a little flange on the wheel on the wheel itself that were built for a racetrack. That it wasn't actually a whole quarter-inch tire hitting the track. It was just a 32nd of an inch flange, which made this car really fly. Matchbox had to do some damage control as they were rolling out their 68 line and revamp everything, because they had these old wheels with basically axles that were made out of a nail, and they weren't race cars by any means. And they were bulldozers and cement mixers, which isn't a race car to begin with. Here's Hot Wheels with the Spectra Flame paint. You know, they were all glitzy and you know, just really impressive. I'm not a Hot Wheels collector. I can appreciate Hot Wheels, but being true to my Matchbox, you know, I'm sure it'll be up for discussion after, you know, this is viewed. The debate over Matchbox and Hot Wheels. But Hot Wheels gave them a run for their money, you know, fair run for their money. They had to retool everything, and by 68, 69, 70, the entire line was changed to Superfast, which still, you know, being loyal Matchbox, wasn't as fast as Hot Wheels. You know, even though this is on film, I'm going to deny it, you know, so.
It's interesting to see, though. I mean, you have competition among the large car manufacturers, and in the toy collectible field, you had the same thing then between Matchbox and Hot Wheels. How did that play out through the years? I mean, was the market kind of split, or how did the market develop from the late 60s on with Hot Wheels and Matchbox?
Matchbox ended up going into receivership a few times because they weren't as quick on the uptake as Mattel with Hot Wheels, and there were other English toy makers. There was Husky and Corgi and Dinky, and Corgi gave Hot Wheels a little bit of a shot with their Whiz Wheels, that they were a quick, you know, race car, you know, and they had their own track system, all that kind of stuff. They were a mimic of what Mattel was putting out. Matchbox was still, through their corporate leaders, weren't reticent to, you know, becoming a race car, you know, toy making company. They wanted to stick with what they called, you know, trucks that were lorries and cement mixers and bulldozers and tanker trucks, and there were very few American cars in the line. It was a big deal for them when they introduced the Dodge Charger and the Mercury station wagon, but it's a Mercury station wagon. It's not a Firebird that Mattel is putting out, you know, so just by, you know, who's going to want this Mercury wagon next to so they struggled for a lot of years. They finally caught up, I'm sorry, never actually caught up in the mid-80s, but then they went completely in the wrong direction with big bobblehead race car drivers sticking out of the roof of the car and motors sticking out through the hood. You know, they just went completely in the other direction, and that was to their detriment also. And like I said, they'd been in receivership a lot of times, you know, because of, you know, bad, you know, marketing ideas.
I know when we were looking around at some of the amazing collection of toys that you have, especially as we were talking about the Matchbox cars and everything, but what makes it a collectible piece? What gives it the value? I know you mentioned something about the box and the car itself. I mean, explain this a little bit if you would.
There are, let's see, there's two different collectors as far as Matchbox goes. There's a collector that just wants to get one of every piece of the 1 to 75 range, and they're not really interested in mint examples. You know, they want to, you know, be able to look at their collection and stuff like that. My collection, I do have an entire collection that is just played with pieces, and you know, that's kind of what I consider like my parts inventory. I focus on having a complete collection back from 1952 up until the mid-80s, when, like I said, they ended up with the bobblehead sticking out of the car that it was of no interest to me. So I focused on backtracking and just making a complete collection. There are cars that are mint examples from 1953 when they were a Moco Lesney, that the car is worth $75 and the box can be worth $300 to $500 for a box, because they were throwaway. You know, the boxes, they sold collector's cases that you could put your cars in, so the box was irrelevant at that point and ended up ditched. So there's very few boxes actually out there.
It's kind of a lesson on Christmas morning when you have, you know, kids running down or running to open up their Christmas gifts from Santa and everything, and, you know, of course the boxes are tossed away and things like that, and over time you find out that they're actually more valuable than it sounds like than the actual toy itself.
I think I was the exception to the rule. I played with the car, but I played with the box too. Like, I could appreciate the box as well as the car, so, you know, that's not typical of what a kid would do.
But at the beginning you also mentioned, though, that your parents usually would buy you two, one to put away and one for you to play with, which, you know, for parents that are listening now, maybe that makes a lot of sense too, to try and buy two of something so that one could be played with and enjoyed and one could kind of be preserved. Yep. Although, I guess that's another question I would have for you. What does the market look like now for these kind of toys? I mean, do they really have any value with them being mass produced in most likely China, Malaysia, places like that?
They do the older Matchbox, the ones that are made by Lesney. They're always going to be good and collectible. The Malaysia ones, the China ones, the Thailand, they were so mass produced that mint and unopened blister pack examples from the 80s or 90s, it'll say limited edition, or well, when they mean a limited edition, they produced 8 million. That's not limited edition as far as I'm concerned. The original Matchbox, while they did have runs that they could make 8 million of a Cadillac or a Chevy, time is against them because they were played with, and before anybody realized that these things have a little value, they were thrown away when kids went to college and moved out of the house, you know, so not a lot actually survived. When I say not a lot, there is a lot out there, but not compared to the, you know, the Hong Kong and the newer releases. They were made more for a collector's market, kind of like Hess trucks are now. Collectors are finding, other than the 64, 5, and 6 Hess trucks, anything made after that, with exception of 1 or 2 years in the 70s or 80s, that they were made specifically for collectors. The makers knew that they were going to be put away and not played with, so there's a flood of mint in box examples that aren't even going to be worth what they were paid for. But Matchbox, the older ones, you can never go wrong with that. You do have to deal with maybe, you know, I'm a certain age, and a new collector coming in to the market, or, you know, wanting to start a collection, they're not dying to have a 1958 Cadillac, you know, as, you know, they want a race car, they want something like that.
How has the collecting industry changed, though? I look at like eBay. I mean, at one time you had to go out and search for these things, maybe at a toy show, maybe like, you know, at an antique shop or something like that. Now at eBay, you could pretty much just, unfortunately, I hate to say it, because the collecting spirit seems to be gone. You could just type in what you're looking for and bid on it and hopefully get it. But as a collector yourself, what are your thoughts on how that looks now?
eBay, I mourn, you know, the loss of the old-fashioned toy show. There are toy and die-cast shows and train shows still around, but like you said, you know, if you can't sleep one night, you wake up and, you know, hit eBay, and anything you want, you could type it up and there it is, and it's at your door in a few days. It kind of, you lose the thrill of the hunt, you know, with the flea market, you know, finding something under a table at a train show. You know, here's this, you know, unloved little jewel that, you know, is worth $1,000. And now, you know, on eBay, just put up rare Matchbox and there's an onslaught of, you know, 1,000 pieces that you have to narrow down. Everybody's tagging rare onto it. And eBay, while I am, you know, on eBay and, you know, and I bought a lot of things on eBay, it has taken away from the actual collector's standpoint of the hobby, which is, it's sad. It really is. On the other hand, eBay, if there's an obscure piece, you know, that I'm looking for, I'm looking at filling in some gaps in my collection. My collection is pretty much complete back from '53, but there are a few pieces that I am missing, and I've been adding prototype pieces that were never supposed to leave the factory, and eBay is a wonderful source for them. So it's, you like it or you don't like it, it's good or it's bad, you know, it all depends on how you look at it.
So we have the upcoming holiday season and everything, and we've talked a lot about the Matchbox cars and everything, but I know most people are setting up their trains and everything, getting ready for the holidays, the Christmas season with their toy trains and everything. So tell us a little bit about your collection of toy trains, because as we took a look through everything, I mean, I've noticed some Lionel, I've noticed various gauges and various models and everything. Tell us a little bit about what you have, what you're proud of, what you really are thrilled with, what was exciting to collect.
My parents, they bought my brother and I, HO train sets and American Flyer. And there was a hobby store that used to be, maybe some, older people remember, it was Barrow's Hobby Center up in Clark Summit. And it was a wonderland. You'd walk in there with a very small little, storefront, but for a kid walking in there and, you knew Dad was going to come home with a train. And also in Hudson, kind of your stomping ground,
yes.
Cy had, and I'm sure, I forget what the name of that train shop was, but we know what the shop is. And his son is still actually, has a train shop there. It was an excursion, that like, oh boy, train, we're gonna come home with some trains. And I remember getting my first Tyco Crescent Limited, which is a Pacific engine, and it was, ceremoniously given to me before Christmas so I could, learn how to operate it. And I do have a train set from Mantua Tyco that was a Santa Fe Chief set that was bought at American Auto, which used to be a few, less than 2 blocks here from my home. And that was, it had an observation car, these extruded aluminum coaches, and Santa Fe is, you can never not love a Santa Fe train set. And that I still have my original, no credit to myself, Mom and Dad, obviously saved the boxes and everything from that. But I'm just, that I can have that and appreciate it right now is just wonderful for me.
So in collecting the model trains and everything, are you a diesel fan or more of a steam engine fan, or kind of a little bit of both?
I'm a steam guy. I can appreciate a diesel. Like GG1s are always, top on my list, and I have a few GG1s. The steam sets by Mark's company, Lionel, was obviously a large Lionel or 027 maker. Mark's bought a lot of old companies that had gone out of business, and they just continued their tinplate toys. Mark's trains were always a little less detailed, more toy-like, and I ended up having an appreciation for these Mark's trains. I don't, not give credit to Lionel, for all the detail they had, but there's something about a Mark's train that is just toy-like, and if you see a Mark's train running, it's wonderful. There's a saying with Mark's train collectors that because they made so many of them, and they were tin plate, and the only rare Mark's train is one that doesn't work, and because literally bazillions of trains were made by Mark's, and they also had all different kinds of sparkling mechanisms to make sparks with a flint come out of the arms and out of the smokestack, and you would fill a little rubber ball with baby powder, and there was a little anvil that would hit the little and a little puff of smoke. You couldn't get away with selling anything like that now.
You mentioned a couple of different toy stores in the area. Take us and our viewers down a little nostalgia trip, if you would. What were some of the toy shops and the hobby places that you
Hobby Center, the Sweeney's with Scranton Hobby Center. Incredible. I owe a lot of my early toy collecting, train collecting to the Sweeney's, and then there were the Kovalevskis. And they were responsible for, Tony Kovalevsky was originally responsible. He was, if it wasn't for Tony Kovalevsky making the Hudson miniatures, which were a model kit like from the mid-40s up until he sold the company to Revell and sold the dies, all the model car kits that are in existence today can be traced back to Tony Kowaleski in Scranton, Pennsylvania. I have the original, I kind of, off the top of my head, I can't, it's either 16 or 13 of the original Hudson miniature sets. They're wood model kits with brass pieces and glass windshields, and and you actually had to work to put this kit together. The other hobby centers, there was a hobby center in Wilkes-Barre in the Midway Shopping Center. I can't remember the name of that hobby center. And Gay's True Value up in Tunkhannock. Every little hardware store, they all had their little Matchbox spot. And like I said,
we're back to Matchbox
originally
again.
Back to Matchbox again. Sheely's Pharmacy, downtown Scranton. There's a pharmacy, but sold matchboxes. We have Percy Davis's drugstore that's out of business now. It's an eye care center, but the original building is there, and it's only a block from my home, and they would sell matchboxes also. And it was a big deal when I was homesick from school once, and Robitussin cough syrup, Mom had Percy Davis deliver the Robitussin, and also a bottle of Coke syrup, which was the old Coca-Cola syrup for a sore throat. But on the top of the bottle of Robitussin was the DAF girder truck that was part of the promotion. And paid to get sick, here I got a Matchbox. I'm laying on my deathbed, but got a new Matchbox. So.
What else in your collection? I mean, we've talked about, again, the trains now and the Matchbox and everything. What other toys are you proud of that bring back that childhood for you again, makes you just get that nostalgic feeling again?
I have a large collection. I didn't realize it, I just always added to it, of Tootsie Toy and Dinky and Husky and pretty much all the makers, whatever maker can be named.
I didn't see too many Tonkas, so that's okay, because being a collector of Tonkas, but anyway.
Up there. They've been put away, because I knew you were coming. I've had you here before, and have to check your pockets lots of times.
Only for Tonkas, but they're so big we can't fit them too much.
Yeah, you can't smuggle them out of the house. I can appreciate just all the makers, and they're all like, I'm 58 years old, but you never give up the ghost of your childhood, you know that, and you don't look forward to ever having a bad day, but God forbid you have a bad day, I can go up to my third floor and just sit, not take a Tonka and run it on the floor or play with it on my front porch, but just look at it, and then some of the pieces I have are mint and boxed and perfect examples, and then I also have the well worn and played with, and you have to look at how the toy doesn't have feelings, but here's this one toy that was never circulated, mint and pristine, and then here's this other one that had this wonderful life with a child. And and you just think about things, and there's a lot more than just looking at a Matchbox car. There's a lot more into it.
So we've talked a lot about collecting the smaller toys, or the smaller cars, the Matchbox, and a little bit about the Hot Wheels. You also collect some antique cars, and I think we have a unique piece that's kind of sitting right here. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that, and your love of antique cars and your involvement with that?
Sure. I've been a member since I was 16 years old, on and off for a few years with the Scranton region of the Antique Automobile Club, which is the local chapter of the National Club. And I do have a real car, an actual automobile collection. Off the top of my head, I really don't know how many cars I have. A couple. The car that's with us down here in my basement is a 1968 Chrysler Newport business coupe. It was a Canadian issue.
That was a rather large car.
A huge car. It's like driving your living room, literally driving your living room. And the car ended up having some problems. It was a show car at one time, and there's a few pictures there of it actually being on the old International Salt show field that's now the Allied campus. And then it ended up vandalized. I lost the storage that I had for it. It wasn't in my garage, and it ended up vandalized. And I had this car, what am I going to do with it? A souped up, wonderful factory souped up motor. So I made a deal with some friends who, take the motor and the transmission, the whole drivetrain, and I want the front end, the doors, and the back of the car back. Knowing what I wanted to do with it, that I wanted to hang it on my wall. And I have a longtime friend, John Oakes, who owns Superior Welding in Scranton, and him and I cobbled this together. We welded the front end, cut it, and I have a '68 Chrysler driving through my basement wall.
Well, I mean, for all the smaller toys you have to have part of your larger collection of toys in here. That's something I would like to explore with you down in the future, maybe in the spring when we are more out into the antique car field and everything. But I want to bring you back as a guest again to talk some a little bit more about antique cars and collecting and everything like that.
Is that just so you can get me away from my Tonkas?
Anything's possible. Anything is possible. But again, with your massive collection of toys and everything, I mean, what would you tell our audience out there as far as collecting for future generations? What do you think has any value to it, if any of the newer toys do, or is it better off just kind of going back and collecting the older toys?
Don't collect just for the sake of collecting with a monetary, finish line. That's never going to work. My collection, I mentioned to Chris, our cameraman, before that when we were upstairs looking at some of the toys that, this is worth $1,000, this is worth $500. I personally want to keep these things for my life, so they have a $0 value. They're never going to be worth anything. I'm never going to recoup what I've put into it. Collect what you like. If you're a Chrysler guy, collect Chryslers, but you don't have to have a complete collection, just whatever makes you happy. I have my mom and dad, as they got older, they would go to an auction on Tuesday nights in Honesdale, and they brought home around my birthday once, and they knew, what Matchboxes were, that I was just Matchbox crazy, but they brought home this Tootsie toy, this Olds '88 Tootsie toy. It's a green convertible, and the windshield is cast into the die casting, and it's this god-awful, ugly green. It's a horrible car, a horrible toy, and it's chipped, and it's missing the tow hook, and they gave it to me as one of my birthday gifts a lot of years ago. And I always said that, if the house was burning down, I'm going to pass up the Matchboxes. I'm going to grab that. That has a sentimental value to me. If it's worth $1, but the value in my heart is worth, immeasurable. And so basically, a new collector, collect what you like. Don't get involved in anything that's limited edition or, run of 2,500. It's not, go online, do your homework, and literally collect what you like. That's the biggest thing.
Mike, I also know that you're a fan of movies, and some of the older movies, and I see that you have a diorama of Psycho, I believe that is. Do you want to tell us a little bit about the diorama itself of Psycho?
Sure. It's a diorama of the Bates Motel and the mansion in the back, and if the roof comes off of the Bates mansion, and not a lot of people know that Norman Bates' mother's name was Nora. And so Nora's sitting up in her window, and the motel is there, and I had to do watch the movie, whenever it comes on I watch it, or I'll just pop it in my, I almost said VCR, in my DVD player, and I had to get all the details that I could possibly, and then kit bash some things to make the diorama. But Marion's car is sunk in the little pond in the back with the correct license plate, and it's just a really cool little piece that I wanted to make, and it's pretty detailed. It was a lot of fun to make it.
And you also have a skeleton upstairs in your closet, I believe. I mean, people literally have skeletons in there.
Literally skeletons in the closet. There's my dad made. We used to haunt the entire downstairs first floor. My dad made. He hooked up to. She's actually in an antique wheelchair now, but she was originally in a stickly rocking chair, which I found out was pretty valuable, so it needed to be restored. And Dad hooked her up to, she'd sit in the trunk room downstairs and hooked up to a wiper motor of a car, and she would rock. And her name is Pearl E. Gates. And she was a big hit with the kids. She was. Now I don't have the heart to get rid of her. I don't know what I'm going to do with her. I'm not going to obviously put her in my living room, but it's a connection that Dad, made this. That was his project. So unfortunately, Pearl is with me for the duration. So, and that's true to Norman Bates. He kept, Mom in the fruit cellar.
Well, I want to thank our guest, Mike Passero, for taking us down a trip down memory lane, taking us down to enjoy and experience what our childhoods meant at one time. Thank you for sharing your collection with us. And I think calling you the Willy Wonka of toys in our area in northeastern Pennsylvania, in the Scranton area, I think it befits you. But thank you so much for being our guest.
Thank you, Bob.
I'm Bob Savakinus, and this is our program in a nutshell.
Someone wishes my advice. You are too close. Step back a bit. Now I can see you. Always remember, a conscience is what hurts when all